Hey, what is up my fish tank guys and girls? As you can see here, I have the Marine Land Portrait 5-gallon aquarium, which is a very popular aquarium right now. It's budget friendly, it's got that nice rear chamber, but it's primarily designed to be used in freshwater applications. So because I'm going to be converting it into saltwater, in this video I'm going to take a much closer look at the tank to see what changes or modifications I feel are necessary to turn this into a nice little reef tank. Let's check it out. Okay, so since we'll be taking a closer look at this aquarium, I'm going to go through component by component and make sure this aquarium is kind of up to snuff, or if there's something that we want to change or modify for our final build. Now, we're going to start with the basics here, the basics, right, which is going to be the base of the tank. Now, the interesting thing about this base, move this over a smidge here. The interesting thing about this base is there is no real indentation or way that this locks the tank into place. So I'm a little worried about that. However, what I did notice is they do have some strips here, and these are strips of rubbery type material. I believe it is rubber. And that kind of secures the tank on the base at least, because one thing I was worried about is the tank sort of sliding on this base and easily falling off. But because they included some rubber strips here, I don't think that'll be an issue. Now, that was one thing that I was going to modify. I was going to make sure that it didn't move all that much on the base. And but right now it seems pretty good. It seems, I don't know, with a bunch of water in there, I don't think you'd be able to move it all that much, which is good. Okay, so the next part here is we're going to kind of start on the top and work our way down. Other than looking at the actual size and the dimensions of the tank. Now, the first thing you'll notice is this tank is much taller than it is wide. It is not a cube, it is more of a column. So just kind of thinking ahead here, that might cause, not cause issues, but it might be a challenge when it comes to having coral and rock work in this tank. Because if I have a flat piece of rock on the bottom, it's going to be a lot of empty space on the top of the tank, right? You've got, a flat piece of rock will cover this much, and you got all of this, it's just going to be empty, dead zone. So I'm going to be looking for a taller, thinner rock to go right in the middle of this aquarium. That way I can still clean the glass on all sides. Just something that can, keep in mind moving forward with this tank. Now, up first here, we take a look at the lid. The lid is very nice. It is kind of cut to fit in place. But I've seen this on other videos, and one thing I noticed right away is there's no easy way to remove the lid. You can kind of like get your nails under the side here and remove the lid that way. If you see here, right here, you can get your nails under this side, but that's kind of a pain in the butt. So I think there's a real easy fix for this. Probably going to use some sort of 3M hook here on the top so I can easily open this lid, close it, that kind of thing. The light is nice in terms of how it fits on the tank. I have actually seen a few videos of people who converted this into a reef aquarium. Should I show it? Am I here? Here I am. I've seen a few people convert this into a reef aquarium, and they said that these lights are good enough for coral, but I am going to poo-poo on that idea, and we're going to be replacing this. So that's probably the first thing that obviously stands out to me with this tank that needs modified is the lighting, because again, this is geared towards being a freshwater tank rather than a saltwater tank. So for now, I'm just going to flip that up and out of the way as we look at the rest of the tank. So we've got our lid here. We'll remove that. The other thing that I noticed is some people said you could slide this lid back. You could slide it back and remove it that way. But the issue is this guy. There is a really nice piece of plastic, it's molded, right, that covers that rear chamber. Now, the reason that's nice is it probably cuts down on noise a little bit, cuts down on anything falling back in there you don't want to, and it also cuts down on evaporation. So in order to move this lid, you can't really move it all that easily. So I'm going to say that you definitely want a hook or something attached to this lid in order to take it off much easier. Okay, because it's not great. All right. Okay, so I'm going to remove this piece to take a look at the rest of the tank, and I'm going to move the camera up here. Okay, so now we move the tank up, and I'm going to talk about a few other observations that I've had when looking at this tank here for the first time. Now, one thing I'll notice here, which is kind of nice, there is a cutout on the top left corner that I presume is for cords. So if you have any equipment in your display tank area, maybe you have an extra power head, for example, you should be able to run the cord out of here. And the way that this guy is molded, let me hold it down here. You'll see that there's an opening in the back, right? So the cord will go underneath here, and then it'll be able to go out of the back of the aquarium there. Yeah, whatever, it's hard to see. Okay, so I've noticed we've got this notch. That is nice, that's very nice. We've got a nozzle here that you can direct. If you take a look at the bottom of it, it's kind of got some grooves in there to sort of disperse the water flow. So I think that's pretty good. Now, the one thing that I'm a little concerned about here is you'll notice there's an intake here about halfway up the tank, and there is another intake here close to the surface of the water. Now in between here we have a min and a max line of the amount of water you should have in the aquarium, and interestingly enough the minimum line is beneath the top overflow slits, I guess you would say. The maximum line is 3/4 up them, the minimum line is below. So my first instinct is to say I don't like the fact that there is an intake in the middle of the aquarium, but I guess it really depends on the filtration and what's in the back that we're going to take a look at in a moment here. However, with a tank that is this tall versus, you know, wide, it's not so much of a cube as it is a column. Having an intake in the middle there may not be that bad depending on how the water flows through the rear chamber. Okay, so that's not necessarily a bad thing, but we're going to take a look at it and see if we need to make a modification when it comes to this center intake. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to take a look at the filtration in the rear chambers, which is actually probably the most important component of an all-in-one aquarium such as this one. So I'm going to pull out what they've got here. Oop, sponge fell out in the back. And we're going to try to take a look at this. It's kind of hard to do that on video here, okay? But what I am noticing is this sits on a little plastic piece in there. So this flat plastic piece sits on another flat plastic piece. And these side, I don't know what you'd call them, the sides, they kind of go into a groove in this rear chamber. I can't see it, but it goes down in there like this, basically. Goes down in there like that. Now, what I am noticing here that is actually a good thing is that because this is resting on a plastic piece, these are in a groove along the wall of the rear chamber. This area right here lines up with this guy, the middle intake. So what I believe will happen is that water will be coming in here and then forced up and over. It will be coming in this way, forced up and over into this guy. This is like a carbon pad, we might replace that. It's going to go through here, and then it's going to go back down this side. This is the rear. So this is where a sponge is normally located. So it's going to be, the water's going to be entering here, up, over, and then back down, and then it's allowed to escape out of here, okay? So this is actually a pretty decent design. There are a lot of all-in-one tanks where the rear filtration, it doesn't force the water into a particular direction. It kind of disperses when it's in the rear chamber. But this actually looks good, right? The water's going to come in here. It's going to be forced up and over. You can have media up here, and then you'll come down this way. It'll go through your sponge here. It'll get to the bottom, and then it'll shoot out the side. Now, down here is probably going to be a trap or dead zone for detritus. So we'll definitely want to clean that out when we clean this tank. We'll just pull this out and vacuum out of there or swish it in water. Obviously the bottom of the rear chamber is going to be a detritus trap too, but this actually looks pretty good in terms of flow. Now, what I am thinking is it might be beneficial to have some sort of basket or some sort of something here, because I'm not going to be using this. I'm not going to be using this carbon filter pad, whatever it may be. I'm thinking on this side, you know, where the water comes in, we have some filter floss here, like just a cutout filter floss pad. And then up here, maybe we have, you know, some sort of filtration media. Maybe we do Purigen, maybe we do, you know, activated carbon. Then you have the sponge that's going to house your beneficial bacteria. And in the rest of the rear chamber, you can do something like a heater, or maybe you can have some, you know, live rock rubble or marine pure gems, something like that. Okay, so this is actually not too bad. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the return pump and the rest of the rear chamber. So I actually pulled the return pump out here to make it easier to see. It's hard to film down into that chamber, but this thing is really, really small. So this is definitely going to be an upgrade that I want to perform on this aquarium before converting it to saltwater. Because right here, what's interesting is you've got this little pump that sits at the bottom of the chamber, pushes the water up here into a 90-degree elbow, and then there is another 90-degree elbow over here. I'm not going to be able to show you guys that. I'll show you with the rear chamber, but it's hitting two 90-degree elbows. Now, the reason that it's hitting two 90-degree elbows is for ease of access. I tried to eliminate one of the 90-degree elbows, but it made it really difficult to remove the pump and the tubing here. So I get why they did it. I understand why they did it, but having two 90-degree turns in your return pump line is going to definitely cut down on the gallons per hour that this pump is going to be able to push through the system. So that's definitely one upgrade we're going to want to take care of. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the rear chamber here. It's really hard to see. It's very thin. If you have larger arms, you're not going to have a hard time reaching all the way down to the bottom. Let's see if I can move my phone here out of the way. It's really hard to... No, that didn't help me at all. Okay, if you look over here, this is our... Let's see. This is the, you know, filter thing. I don't know what you want to call it, that you can remove, okay? You can remove that. And like I said, it sits on a little... It sits on a little shelf down there that's really hard to see. But as you can see, this side of the chamber is fairly empty. There are a couple plastic spacers that are maintaining the structure because it's kind of a thin wall. But you can easily fit a heater on this side. And maybe on the bottom you can fit, like I mentioned before, some live rock rubble or maybe some marine pure gems, something to improve your biological filtration with this tank. Okay, so now I am going to fill the aquarium up a little over halfway just to see the kind of flow that the stock pump provides. I'm almost positive that I'm going to replace that pump anyway. And I'm also going to be interested to see how the water flows through those rear chambers. So let's go ahead and fill up this aquarium maybe 3/4 of the way and see how it goes. Okay, so now that we have water in the display tank past that middle intake, I wanted to see, you know, how much water kind of seeped out of the sides of the filter basket, I guess you would say. Now, the bottom of the rear chamber is filling up with water. It's hard to see, but it's very slow. It's very slow, so it's actually working okay. It's actually not bad. I was half thinking that as soon as I filled up past that middle intake that these rear chambers would fill up with water very quickly, but it's sort of a trickle. So that tells me that the water is actually going to be forced through, you know, this filtration media the way I'd like to see it going through there. So now I'm going to fill up the rear chamber a little bit so I can plug the pump in and see if the water indeed travels the way that we expect it to. Okay, so in running this experiment here, we've actually found a new minimum. The minimum water level in this tank is much lower than is stated It's actually stated to be way up here, and we're about a good 2 to 3 inches below that minimum water line. At this point, the pump will not run dry because the threshold of where the water goes to the other side of the filter where the sponge is right around where the water line is right now. So it actually is kind of filling up. The rear chamber is staying at the level that it's at. This is staying where it's at, but the water is flowing through the chamber as I would expect it to. It's hard to get a good look here, but you can see that the water is entering in on the side of the tank in the middle down there. It's being forced up and over that small middle wall of the filter, and it's going down through the sponge. Then it's coming out of the side. It's really hard to see. It's coming out of the side down there as we'd expect it to. So I think the filtration for this tank is not bad. Not bad at all. Okay, so once again, I'm the fish tank guy. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed taking a closer look at the Marineland Portrait 5-gallon aquarium. Is there anything that you saw here that you would change or you would modify or upgrade if you turned this into a reef tank or a saltwater aquarium? Now, one thing I am noticing, I mentioned before that the minimum water level was lower than the recommended, and that is true. However, the inlet for the return pump is going to be like splashing and making a lot of noise. So you definitely want to fill the tank up to almost the maximum, because that is the point where the return pump enters the water and it's not going to splash and make a ton of noise. But overall, I think this tank is very well made. I think the filtration in the back actually surprised me. I thought I'd have to make a bunch of modifications. I might create some sort of basket to go in that open slot in the top above the sponge. I'm definitely I have some filter floss where the inlet is right here, or the inflow, whatever you want to call it, in the middle of the tank. So the water going into the filtration hits that mechanical filter pad first to grab all the big stuff. But other than that, I think the rubber on the base is good. The tank itself is good. The light needs replaced. The pump definitely needs replaced. And we might look at adding a power head, but this is a really, really small tank, so a power head might overdo it. So yeah, thanks again for checking this out. Like I said, hopefully you enjoyed a closer look at this aquarium. Stay with me in the upcoming weeks as I'm going to make the modifications that I talked about today, recommend some pumps for this, start to put the tank together, and I'm going to go through with you guys week by week to see what it's like to actually own a 5-gallon aquarium. Now, the last time I tried this experiment, it didn't work out very well for me, so I'm going to do things a little bit different, and hopefully it works out for me, and hopefully if you guys watch and you see my failures and successes, it'll work out for you if you try to do a 5-gallon nano reef of your own. So once again, I'm the fish tank guy. Thank you so much, and until a future fish tank guy video, I will see you guys soon.